Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. I'm delighted to have Roisin Markham with us today, and Roisin is really interested in Indigenous Irish businesses and particularly craft. She stems from a tech and craft background, which is great, and today she's going to talk about sustainability and the conscious consumer. And we thought it appropriate that this was today because today is Earth Day, and viewed as a precursor to the World Crafts Council is having a sustainability conference next Wednesday, so in the morning, so that might be of interest to you. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Roisin, and we keep our fingers crossed that our internet behaves itself. Welcome, Roisin.
Thanks a million, Emer. Hello, everybody. I see we have about 17 participants joined, and we're going to stay on the call for about an hour. Emer, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
The webinar is good. Okay. So what we'll do is I'm really interested to see who's in the room. So I'd like to invite anybody who's joined the call to put where they're dialing in from and to put what your product or what your what your work is, what your business is in the chat. So I'd love to see who's there because you guys can see me, but at the moment I'm not able to see you guys. Maybe if I change from speaker to gallery. No, Emer's hitting you all. No worries. So if you just put in, and this is how webinars go, right? So Adele, oh, how's it going, Adele? From Dublin, brilliant. And say hi, this is Adele from, and put your business in, because I'm interested to see who's in the room and who's showing up to have this conversation. So we're going to talk today about sustainability and the conscious consumer. And really looking, hey Sandra, how's it going? Great to see. Adele, brilliant. Orla Furniture Design, fantastic. Maura Bell, brilliant. Hey, Maura, how's it going? Maura and I have been having lots of conversations about ecotourism and sustainability and zero carbon tourism and how Wexford's going to be the leader there. So I'm dialing in today from North Wexford. I live near Cahor, quite a rural area, so our internet can come and go. So just to be warned, I will try and move a little bit so that you'll see whether I freeze or not. And if the sound quality gets bad, Emer, maybe you'd let me know and I will turn the camera off. Okay, so I think I'll start sharing my screen in a few minutes. Great to see everybody putting in. Hey Rachel, ceramics, brilliant. Julia from 360 Intelligent Communications, let me know exactly what that is.
Great.
So brilliant, great to see everybody dialing in. Cheryl Donegal-based, hey Donegal, how's it going? Graphic designer, excellent. And I love that blend of designers and makers showing up, and the fact that the Design Craft Council of Ireland is running this super series of webinars, and that I'm getting an opportunity to talk to you all about some of the things that I've been thinking a lot about in business terms and working with clients on as well, in terms of how do we move the dial towards sustainability and what is a conscious consumer. Okay, brilliant, Julia. Thank you. PR and digital agency based in Dublin.
Okay, Roisin, you have frozen. We'll just bear with Roisin for a second here. I think she was having issues earlier. Let's see if she can improve the situation. This is the downside. We had this in May last year. I'm sure a lot of you remember that was a terrible time that we had with regard to internet congestion and the difficulties that we had then. So we'll just see, we'll bear with her. That was getting going well. So I'd say she's going to go out and come back in again. I think that's what she's doing. So we'll just bear with it.
My apologies. My computer.
No one's dead. We'll just keep going.
Yeah, I'm definitely not dead. Computer just completely crashed. So again, I just really want to acknowledge that I'm dialing in from rural Ireland during a global pandemic, and thank you all for showing up. All right, I might just get on with it then, seeing as things might continue crashing.
Pay them to show up next week. Okay, off we go again, Roisin.
Apologies, gosh.
Oh, you're getting share my support. Don't worry, Roisin. We're all on your side here.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Thanks. Right, I'm going to share my screen now that it's ready to go. If you have any questions as we're going along, please put them in the Q&A or raise your hand. Emer's going to give me support on that. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Emer, maybe you'd let me know with the hand signal. Good. Okay, brilliant. So this is the presentation for this session today, and it's very light on presentation because I really want us to connect more through the chat and through questions and interacting with you about thinking about your business and where you are. So the first, just to introduce myself, I am Roisin Markham. I'm the Director of Innovation Services with BDT Consultancy. I'm also the founder and network catalyst for IDEN, the Irish Donut Economics Network. And you'll find me online under at Creative Dynamics and business-wise at BDT Consultancy. So my background is that I did visual communications. I worked in the tech sector for about a decade. I built a high-performance startup, wrote and owned a patent process from that time. Left the technology sector. No, I didn't leave it as a millionaire. Left the technology sector, raised a family, just moved to Wexford and decided to work full-time as an artist. I studied art therapy, did the foundation course in Cork. And when we moved to Wexford, I decided I would change what I was doing completely and worked as a community-based art. I worked as an artist with a studio practice and community-based practice, really in the areas of design research, education, and using craft and permaculture a lot. So roll forward to about 2015, I went back out to work in Dublin and have been working in BDT Consultancy as a client advisory management consultant and design-led innovation services business, working with clients like Accenture, Erlengas, Bordbia, and with smaller organizations and companies as well. So thank you all for attending. It's really great to have the opportunity to work with you and to connect with you around sustainability. So I'm really interested to understand, what does sustainability mean to you? So maybe you'd let me know in the chat, like, how do you guys relate to sustainability through your business? Maybe you'd pop it in the chat. All of you, yeah, I'm talking to all of you. So I'd love to see, so what is sustainability for you? For me, sustainability as part of our business is an embedded part of our principles and practices. It's not something we tack on, it's something that's part of our core values. So in terms of a product, we have a services-based business. A bit outdated now, needs to be regenerative. Yeah, and I completely agree with you. We do need to be moving to regenerative, and it's great to see that. So I'm really interested to hear how you're owning regenerative practices in your design and maker practices and businesses. So does sustainability mean anything to you guys? So if you just put in a yes or no in the chat, that would be helpful to me. Using materials from sustainable sources where possible. Karen, maybe you'd let me know what materials you're using as well. That would be interesting. Not selling people stuff they do not need. Yes. So yeah, the conscious consumer would very much be in that area of not buying things that they don't need and being mindful of what they would need. So great. So there's 3 or 4 people who are aware of what sustainability is. So in relation to this conversation, sustainability is really that broad term about how we Yeah, Afric is just saying sustainability can be a competitive advantage when done right. Yeah, and that's really what I want to talk to you about today, is that opportunity that sustainability brings. So sustainability in the sense of, you know, if we look at it and we break the word up, you know, what is sustain and ability, and our ability running businesses and running practices to align with certain values, to align with climate action and mitigation responsibilities, to align with the UN SDGs. Is everybody familiar with the UN SDGs, the sustainability goals, the UN development goals? You need to give me some feedback in the chat if you are familiar. Oh, so Adele, you're not familiar with SDGs. So so the SDGs are 17 key markers that are aligned to 2030 that the United Nations developed. That, you know, for example, number 17 is about relationships and partnerships to develop the goals. So number 12, and there's other things like climate action and life on land, land below sea. There would be things like innovation, decent sustainability goal. Number 8 is decent work practices. So there's quite a lot in the key 17. There's quite a lot, and people can align to. So if you haven't heard of them, do Google them afterwards and have a look. So again, I'm really interested to, okay, so in terms of sustainability and where we go with the conversation, sustainability is about what it means for your business as a maker and as a designer, and really looking at how sustainability can lead to an innovation-led recovery. Or you'll hear a lot of people talking about a COVID pivot and talking about you know, recovery after COVID. And I think that what we're really looking at is a living with COVID and a climate pivot. So the government is about to bring in quite a lot of, it's moving on its climate action bill and has a climate plan that it's delivering into, which is going to bring sustainability much more front and central for all of our businesses. Now, sustainability can be anything from, you know, looking at your practices and your processes, your supply chain, your product, your sales, your point of sales, your how you use electricity, how you use socials, how you use electricity and how you communicate that message across your socials and marketing, how your website is hosted. At the moment we see a lot of greenwashing in the space, and it's really is the case of, as designers and makers, some of you are probably very aligned with sustainability depending on what your products and practices are. Okay, so just going to go on and talk a little bit about the conscious consumer. So the conscious consumer is really a person who will, you know, look at how they purchase things in a very particular way. So if something has too much packaging or too much plastic around it, or has unethical practices, they might not buy that product. If something doesn't come in recyclable material, or they might favor products that align with their lifestyles, which can be linked to, you know, can be linked to things like vegetarianism. It can be linked to climate mitigation, climate action. It can be linked to regenerative practices, and it can also be linked to, you know, tackling the over consumerism that is prevalent in our society today. So conscious consumers tend to be consumers that seek out very particular and often higher end products and buy them because they, instead of buying 3 or 4 things, they might only choose to buy one thing, but it'll fit to their values and how they live their lives much more so than at any other point. So it might be things like what we're seeing now is people will look at brands and they will look at the brand supply chain and to see like who's making the product, how are they supporting the people who are making the product in terms of bigger brands, in terms of smaller. And I think that the Indigenous marketplace for designers and makers in Ireland offers a really interesting opportunity of really differentiating yourselves to say, yes, I have a sustainable practice, or these are the elements in what I make in terms of my product or my supply chain, and really pull out those emphasis on differentiating yourself and how you are showcasing your credentials so that a conscious consumer can find you. And so, because once a conscious consumer connects with the business, they will tell all of their friends. Like with anything else, word of mouth is really critical and important, but that, you know, social proof is also a critical thing for any business in terms of conscious consumer as well.
You did spot
yes,
the materials that people are using, and we have one
yes,
person. You spotted those, have you? From
sorry,
Sandra,
you must say that again.
and Sandra and Karen and Anne have given you the materials.
Yes.
Using. Yeah. Did you spot that?
Brilliant, and that's great to see. So Rachel is saying that she uses biodegradable materials to pack my pieces and get them to the customer safely. So that's brilliant, Rachel, and I'd love to hear. I'll give you guys a little bit of an opportunity to talk about that shortly. So Sandra, my business uses wool for crafts and products, so sustainability means a lot. Excellent. And Irish tweed using mainly offcuts from another local source. Wonderful. So they're really good examples of where sustainability is. And I think the opportunity is to actually talk to your consumers about where the differentiation is between your business and maybe somebody else's business that might seem like you're competing in the same marketplace, but actually if you have a sustainable practice, or if you are aligned with sustainable values and climate mitigation values, that it's really important that you're using that as part of your unique product offering with, you know, through your social marketing, directly with customers and clients, through your newsletters or any other type of point of sales material that you have. So Adele, you're saying all of your materials are sustainable and sourced locally. Wonderful. Okay, so there's some really, and Anne is talking about using electricity for wind generated. So things like electricity in the supply chain is depending on what kind of a maker you are. Well, we're all using electricity in terms of technology. So that's one element to be considered as well. I'm interested to know, actually I'll get to that. So the conscious consumer is really about, you know, do you know who your customer is? And I'm interested, do any of you think that you can identify a conscious consumer within your purchasing, you know, the purchasing patterns that you might be looking at? I'm conscious also that we've been in COVID, and a lot of you might have been affected by the global pandemic and how complicated it's made selling in the marketplace, but maybe that's offered you a push towards moving to digital sales points or setting up your own digital shop. So let me know in the chat if COVID has pivoted you towards being online more and using the digital advantage more to reach people. So that was several questions at once. So when you talk about the conscious consumer, you talk also, I know previously when I've talked with some of the Design and Craft Council of Ireland members and clients, that there was a conversation around developing a persona of who your customer is. And it's quite interesting that once you start looking at who buys your product, who buys you know, some of you might have a range of products, and if you understand who is purchasing it, it makes it easier to develop a sales approach and a sales funnel towards that. Okay, so Anne is saying that definitely when speaking with customers at my markets, all pre-lockdown, they're very aware of climate issues and sustainability. Brilliant, Anne. Yes, we have moved more in line. So Sandra King is saying she developed an online shop during the first lockdown. It's been a lifesaver to my business and keeping us operating. So brilliant. And I think that more and more as we move towards cheaper, more affordable solutions in e-commerce, then people will be able to find you more easily. And that supply chain between you making a product and getting it out to the marketplace and getting it to a customer or consumer, a paid product exchange for your business is really critical. Raw material supply chains have been challenged through COVID-19 plus Brexit has had an added effect. Yeah, Emer, that's a critical point to make as well. Okay, so really interested to know, do you guys recognize the conscious consumer as somebody who's buying your products? Maybe you'd let me know in the chat. Yeah, Dell is saying yes. Okay, so I think also understanding who is difficult to know online, but yes, face to face. So that's something that you can consider, Anne, in terms of, you know, the interaction with people online. Is you can always put in some questions around sustainability or, you know, consumerism as you get into developing your approach towards sustainability and owning that in your marketplace. That would be something that would be interesting to draw people out upon if it is something you decide that could be a differentiator for you. So looking at sustainability and the conscious consumer and creating the business opportunity in the market. So really understanding that there are opportunities in the marketplace and how to place your product among them is a normal part of running any business. But with sustainability and a conscious consumer approach, I think that in 2 years ago when I was working with Board Bia, they were looking at high-end food products like the whiskies that sell for over €500 plus, and they were considering that what was called the lowest market had increased from being 5% to 12% in over 2 years. Now, for some of you, the Japanese and the Chinese market might be, you know, a different kind of marketplace, but through e-commerce, they're very, very accessible and very attainable. So it's really about looking across at your product and where you're selling those products and who you're attracting to buy those products. That sustainability and conscious consumerism and that low, you know, lifestyle marketplace could be something that you could really go after and gain some traction on. I think people that look to buy Irish craft are potentially looking for something a little bit different anyway, and there are possible advantages, I think, and definite advantages for you defining your products in that way. So seizing opportunity to differentiate your product is an important part of any sales, but especially as we move out of as we move through living with COVID and move on to how we work and how we earn our living as we move forward with living with COVID and start dealing with climate change. So I'm interested to know what your current practices are around product process. So these are all the things that when you start looking at a circular economy or an innovation-led recovery, that you can look through your product and process, how you purchase your materials, your supply chain. And I'm talking about your full supply chain from where you think about making something and how you make something to purchasing the materials, to making the actual product, to developing the product for the marketplace, developing all the point of sales materials around it, developing all your social channel communication, your website, how you communicate with customer and clients, how you, if you have an e-commerce site, your sales, point of sales, and your website potentially. Also, one of the things is having that as an eco-hosting website. Is a really strong contender as just a simple thing you can do, but actually it signals that you are looking and thinking about sustainability and taking action around it. So again, I'm interested to know where you might see how looking at your business and your products, where you might see those opportunities would be for sustainability. And I think it's a good opportunity to look across all of these practices and say, where are the pieces that I could be more sustainable, that I could explore being, having a sustainable practice, either in purchasing, either making it more locally based, offsetting how you deliver your supply chain, both in and out of your business as well, either with carbon offsets or doing things like having a point of sales carbon offset, something like EcoCart would be. Have any of you come across, are any of you using EcoCart? Let me know in the chat if you're using EcoCart. So EcoCart is a point of sales, is a free point of sales add-on where you can calculate out the carbon cost of delivering your product to the person who wants to purchase it, and it shows them how much it'll cost them to offset delivering that product to them, so they can choose to add that to their cost or not. But it also has two benefits. One, you say to people, I'm taking responsibility for when you purchase a product from me, I will offset the carbon, but I will give you the opportunity to offset the carbon and you get to pay for it. But I'm making you aware that you have this opportunity to pay for it. And then people can decide to pay for it or not. And it tends to be quite affordable. So when I meet an EcoCart, I know of, Chocolate Eclair is a vegan chocolate maker out of Dublin. She runs a very ethical business, and she's using EcoCart. And actually, I'm in a big Slack channel with a whole load of organizations globally, technologists globally, who are working on developing technology solutions for climate mitigation. And the founder of EcoCart is in that community. So he just mentioned to me that they've got funding, huge amount of funding. So it's a completely free product to include in your e-commerce site. And you can also, not only can you include it in your e-commerce site, but you can also have it as a Chrome extension, so that every time you are Googling something, you can offset that as well in terms of your use across the internet, which is really interesting. So, there are options where you get to plant trees while you're Googling. So things like Ecosatia, don't know if any of you come with Ecosia, sorry, which is a search engine that you can also add on to Chrome. So the companies, so Anna's just asked me, do I know of any website e-hosting companies? So I have been looking for an Irish one, because we're in the middle of redeveloping our website, and I've taken down our old website, and I'm actually currently, so I haven't been able to verify any Irish vendors, but if you Google website eco-hosting, Green Geeks is the one that I'm considering using for our business. That I think that it'll be, I've kind of looked at them several times, and I've done things like go to Quora and Reddit and check that they are as good as they look, and that's important. But there are some smaller organizations. I think there's a guy in Leitrim that offers eco-hosting. I haven't been able to get his details, and I was hoping to have them to share. So again, do your homework, ask around. But it's one of those simple things that you can do, is to have your hosted have your website hosted with an eco-hosting site, especially if you're coming up to your renewing your website hosting, or you want to change your practices around it. They're like two really small, simple things that you can do. The bigger things, I think, are really looking at your product and your process and your supply chain, and decarbonizing it as one element, and looking at how you can use more sustainable practices. So, for example, I know a couple of businesses around Gorey, which I live close to, that anytime they get packaging themselves, they keep what I would call the stuffed in packaging pieces, they keep whatever they get and they reuse them. But then there are some quite sophisticated variations on it. There's the cardboard that's cut in a particular way that you pull it and stretches out, and that keeps a lot of different products and materials safe. Now, again, if any of you are glass makers, you obviously have to ensure that if you're shipping glass of any size or scale, that you're shipping it in appropriately. If you're doing sculpture or ceramics at any point, it's obviously, and I know that there are some ceramicists on the call. It's really important that you maintain that safe packaging. But if you could divest from using unsustainable practices like the air popping, or that Amazon uses, for example, or the polystyrene peanuts that were really popular. Obviously, they're a huge issue for environmental concerns, and you can't recycle them. You can reuse them, and I think that they have gone out of fashion. So Anne Harrington is saying that she reuses cardboard boxes and also uses them for composting or for making them dig beds in the garden. Great use for them, and I think that's an important thing, is to not just to recycle things, but to actually find a reuse for them as well. And it would be interesting. So the circular economy really looks at how you take something in its original form that you might receive it, and how you change that, and how you reuse it as best business practices at different stages all across the supply chain. And I think a lot of makers actually follow that practice, because it would be referred to as bootstrapping, and that would be a way to keep costs down and to keep things cost efficient. But there are definitely other ways that you can look across the process, your processes. Not having an insight into what all of your processes are, is one of those kind of interesting things, and that's definitely something that I'd like us to talk about. So in terms of sustainability and the conscious consumer, I'd encourage you all, if you're not already on that journey, to begin the journey. Talk to your customers and use your social channels to draw out your unique product offering or differentiators, and be transparent about your business journey. For example, if you're at the beginning of a sustainability conversation in your business, state that. Explore it with your customers. So there's a difference between people that follow you on social channels and people that are your customers as well. Make sure you're talking to your clients and your customers and people who are actually purchasing from you, as well as your followers across all the social channels. Okay, so I'd love to hear if there are any questions. I'd love to hear a little bit more conversation. So if anybody has any questions, if you'd like to go ahead, and Emer, I don't know if you're going to field them.
I'm just watching out for them for you. I'd like to know if people are finding, just as an aside, problems with their raw material channels. I've been hearing it from an awful lot of makers, and I'd just like to look into that myself in further detail. It's really challenging, but I really think that this is a unique selling point, that all of our clients have great potential to develop as part of their integrity and develop as part of their sales pitch.
Yeah, I think that, so we get to the raw materials question in a minute. I think that the drawing out any designer or maker's unique product offering is really important. So if you're making a handcrafted product, versus a product that's being made that might be designed in Ireland and made in Europe. That's a different, unique product offering. If you're designing a product and it's being made in China, that again has a unique product offering. And it also has quite a different supply chain that would need to be really thought about and considered. So it's not necessarily about what you're selling, it's also the practice of what is the whole process from the start to finish of when a customer gets your product into their hand. And you also have to think about, and one of the things I don't think we talk about is the end of the product life cycle. So for example, I purchased something from a card. There's a card maker in the audience. So say I purchase a card. What does it come with? Does it come in a plastic envelope? Has that plastic envelope, is it made out of plastic, or is it one of those alternative to plastics? Am I told that when I'm purchasing the product? Am I told that when I receive the product? So I know that I can actually put that alternative to plastic in my compost bin and I don't have to throw it in the bin. Can I recycle it? What information are you giving people about the product? So if I buy a handmade card, it'll typically be that I'll want to keep it. In fact, I often buy two so that I get to keep one for myself and then send one to somebody else too. And so it might be a case of if I keep it, but what happens, say, if it's a product, say a mug, say a piece of ceramic and a plate, and that plate breaks, what happens at the end of that life cycle? How do we encourage people to think about what they do once they're finished with our products? Or, I typically use broken crockery to put at the end of pots. Or if it's something really beautiful, I'll try and get it repaired so that I can still have that beautiful object. So they're important things to think about in terms of the full product life cycle, and also that end piece. If you're using plastics or resin at all in any of your products, they're also important things to think about. So interesting, Karen, you're saying that you keep every envelope and box which comes into your house. Okay, yes, I mentioned that before. You've changed your embroidery thread supplier to an Irish-based agent as there were too many delays. So that's the repercussion of Brexit. And Harrington Science of Princeton, Ireland, the company has been sourcing organic fabric from a UK wholesaler, but are now looking to source for Portugal. So you are seeing impacts from Brexit. Or Reynolds is saying she outsourced elements of production. How do I go about accounting for the manufacturer's sustainability process? And what if they won't change their behaviors? So in circularity and the circular economy, and I don't know if any of you have been following what Circulaire are doing in Ireland at all, but they're working with Irish manufacturers to bring them to the circular economy. And there's 3 levels within the circular economy. So level 1, you're just looking at your own business and your own business practices. Level 2 is you're looking at level 1 and your employees. So it might be like, how do they commute to work if you have employees? And depending on the size and scale of your business. And level 3 then is that you're looking at your vendors, you're looking at manufacturers. So the answer to that Orla, is that you can ask manufacturers, you can ask them to change, and if they don't, you source a different vendor that's more aligned to your business practices or what you want to see. For example, I mentioned Chocolate Eclair. So her product is all the way through the life cycle sustainable. She uses organic inks for her printing, and her packaging is fully recyclable. On the inside of her chocolate bars are wrapped in a corn-based like plastic product, and that's the thing about deciding so you could have a product range and you could have one product that is really based around the conscious consumer, and that product range could be very distinctly in a higher price point category because of the sustainability, that you've taken extra care and extra caution, that at every stage in the process that I mentioned, across your practices, your business practices, your product, your process, your materials, your supply chain, that product or product line is based around conscious consumerism and sustainability. So it may have a higher price point. It may have really like a luxury market element to it. It just is being aware of and again, exploring what the opportunities are there. So there's some really, really good conversation happening in the chat. I hope you're all keeping an eye on it. So Circular was featured by EcoEye a few weeks ago. You might still catch that on the RTE player. It's well worth looking at. Adele is saying that she switched to Irish suppliers. If you can find Irish suppliers that suit your practices, brilliant. Europe offers another range, and building a network and a supply chain for what your business needs are is really important. And de-Brexiting it as well is important. Only buying viscose thread from certified sustainable sources, avoiding polyester. Okay, Karen, interesting. So Orla is saying that it's not an easy thing to do. We've tooled up with huge investment. So Orla, can you remind me what your product and what materials you're using again? So I've lost all the chat from before my internet died or my computer died, so I can't go back and check, but I'd be really interested to see. So if you've any questions and you want to shoot them, sometimes you have to spend a while looking at what are our business practices, what are our products, what is our unique product offering, and what is our customer segmentation. And then really look to see if the customer segmentation has an opportunity for growth within that sustainability and conscious consumer practice. Now, I do believe that, yeah.
Roisin, could you give me an example or two of what you would consider best practice and businesses that are being really progressive, ahead of the curve, that we can learn from?
Best practices ahead of the curve. So I would say, it's a good question, Emer. I'm not seeing enough of it, and this is the reason why I kind of put my hand up to talk about this to the Design and Craft Council of Ireland members, because I want more businesses to be considering it. I think that we're not just talking about a Brexit or a COVID pivot now. We do need to be addressing climate. The government is going to start laying really strict targets, and we will need to be addressing them as businesses.
There's an answer for you. Bumblebee Farm, flower growing in West Cork.
So, yeah, and actually, I came across there's a similar. She's a wonderful practice, and one of the things I love about Bumblebee Farm is not only is she like one of her regenerative practices I see is not only that she's offering a gorgeous product like. A gorgeous product to the marketplace, but like if you love her product so much, you can buy the flowers. But she also has a really generous offering on the kinds of things she's planting and how to grow them. And I think that's an extraordinary thing for a business to be doing. It's not just say, hey, this is what I'm doing, I'm owning it in a very sustainable way. But if you know, I want to inspire you to also do this. I think that's a really interesting point. So I'm thinking about your question still, Emer. So I think that what can happen is that there can be quite a lot of greenwashing, and once you start scratching back, some of the alignments on ethics and business values aren't quite congruent. You know, there's like, hey, we're saying we're doing sustainability, but once you start scratching below the surface, they're not quite, or the product comes and it's in this enormous box. So it's really important that I'd encourage people to start small and build their own journey and conversation with sustainability. I think sustainability, every business should be doing it and needs to be addressing it. But as I said, there are some very easy wins. It's also the how to do it as groups. For example, some people within it might be very difficult for a card owner to purchase a certain amount of quantity they might need of alternative plastic sleeves, for example. It might be expensive. So maybe they join as a collective with other people in that area and do a collective purchasing plan and build, crossways business connections and opportunities on how to solve these things. Because you've got to remember, your business is not going to be the only business looking to become more sustainable. Your business is on its own business journey, but there are other people who you can connect to and share a learned practice with as well. I think that, so for me, Claire Tate's business, Chapter Claire, is one of those businesses I would really hold as having very good ethics and being very aligned. She runs her business in the way that she delivers it. Origin Green, lots of greenwashing. Yeah, unfortunately, I have tried to tackle that with the board BIA, but they've only half listened to me. Good idea. Minimum order quantities can be too big for smaller companies. Yeah, and I think it is. So one of the things about the Design Craft Council of Ireland is that it is a membership organisation, and I think that if you guys are having business challenges, work with the Design and Craft Council of Ireland, work with Emer, work with the Leos, get them to help you solve your problems, develop clusters and huddles of businesses that can work together to figure this out, that can work together to hire somebody like me or somebody like Deirdre Lane who offers sustainable business practices and the how to solve it and help you on that journey. So, if you're saying this is going to cost us too much money to invest in, how do we make that change? Maybe there's a collective way to regenerate how to think about that and how to solve it as well. I'll have to think, Emer, about good practices, and I might send you some examples as a follow-up.
I would know a number of craftspeople who genuinely have these practices in their lives, and they do it as best they can in their production. But they do find, they would have a straw built house, they would have an electric car, their production is as eco-friendly as they can get. But there are still challenges. The DCCI will help as much as we can, groups to get together and to get kind of economies of scale on things. But what I'm trying to get is there a business that you think that can show you that there were challenges and that they got over it, and how did they get through them? And would you have examples of that type of thing? Roisin, you're on mute.
Unmuted. Yeah, thanks. I do have an unmute button on my wall as a subtitle. So again, Emer, I will look for one. I don't have a best practice right now. I'm trying to think of, so one of the things that I've been working on in the last year is looking to do case studies with small, medium enterprises on how to transition to aligning to the SDG goals. And I had very little interest in it. I am talking to one technology company that they'd be a medium-sized technology company, and we are going to do a case study with them on it. But I'd be really interested to have a cohort of designers or makers across the Design Council of Ireland as a study group, as like a best practice group, as to, can we explore this? How does it function for my business? And do more of a workshop-based thing rather than a webinar to really look at, well, how does this apply for my business? I think that would be something that would be really interesting to explore further.
I'm not putting you in any way in the spot, or please don't view it like that. But this is the sort of thing that I really want to tease out with you, because the integrity in what our clients make and do is there. And as I said earlier, I was trying to juxtaposition the kind of the more crass commercial with the sustainable, but I do think that they can be merged, and I mean, I know it's awful to say unique selling point, but part of their being and a unique selling point can be one and the same thing. So I think it's really something that we could explore, and we have people here who are genuinely interested in, you know, taking this further. So I think it's a way to go.
Yeah, for me, it's really like, how do we solve the problems as we face them in our businesses? You know, and for me, I think that COVID really stopped most of us, if not all of us, in our tracks last year. And it is that piece of like, if we are fundamentally changed and changing the way we're living and purchasing things, and you will see the Marketing Institute has just put out a report on conscious consumerism and the changes in Irish purchasing patterns, and I think that's quite interesting to watch. So there's been a real holding. I know that I've definitely gone out and I've bought very little things in the last year, bar, you know, like food, alcohol, literally. I have bought some really nice pottery, and I have gone out and actually I bought some really nice prints from Irish makers and really sought them and sought like something that I can have in the house to look at and to really enjoy and really value. But I looked carefully. I watched people on their social channels before I purchased, and it was quite interesting to see what came with those purchases. They weren't super expensive, and in fact, some of them I thought were too cheap. Like the value was I was quite surprised at. But I bought from Irish makers, and I bought from Northern Ireland makers, not because and actually I bought from an Eastern European printmaker and an American illustrator as well. So I do think it's about, where are we finding the edges of the sales opportunity? Where are the people on this call? There's 22 people on, well, 20 people on this call. Where are the interesting edges for their business around that unique product offering? And are they making the most of that opportunity? And if at any point in your current practices, you're doing something that other people, you know, mightn't be aware of because it's part of just how you do things, like saving boxes, whatever. I think that's an interesting thing, you know, especially if you have an Instagram account or a Twitter account, to just, you know, photograph it or talk about it and say, this is part of my business practice. I don't name it as sustainable because that's just how I do things. And there are ways that you can communicate these things and position your business with things that you're already doing as core parts of your practice. In terms of purchasing, in terms of decisions, in terms of finding, you know, making sure, somebody was mentioning the threads that they were using. That's an important principle of practice, that you're changing your manufacturing, not just because of Brexit or maybe because of Brexit, but also you're really looking at your supply chain and how you can deliver it. They're things that when somebody is purchasing your product might be completely invisible to them. But if people are on your social channels, they see that and they see your journey as a small business owner. And that's also an incredibly rich and important part of your business journey as to making those sales. Okay. Right. So I'm just looking at my notes on the wall behind the computer. Bear with me. I want to make sure that I've covered. So yeah, so I'd really love to get some feedback in the chat. As designers and makers, what do you think is your opportunity around sustainability and conscious consumer, and how are you going to seize it? That's one of the things I'd really like you to think about. So if you want to put it into the chat, as designer makers, what is the opportunity and how are you going to seize it? Like, what has this conversation made you think about, and what are you going to do? What's going to be your next step?
Roisin, I think also, to be fair to everybody, they may need time to percolate this, see how they have been progressing in their own practice. And, you know, if you're willing to get a group together, maybe convene later in a smaller group, or would that
Sure. I'm really open to exploring it. I think it'd be really interesting to look at a cross sector of different makers and designers, different scales as well, and really have a more textured conversation around what is that opportunity, how do we look at it, how do we assess those points, and how do we work on those points, as well as running our business, right? As well as making products and selling them. How do we do this other thing, and what does that look like? I think that would be really interesting to explore and talk about. And if the Design Craft Council of Ireland wanted to offer that in association with any of the local enterprise boards, I think that would be great.
Okay, well, I will certainly look at that. And what I'd also like to bring forward, and probably for other webinars, is I was coming at the kind of the Brexit and COVID necessities that have allowed us to look at more sustainable options in the raw material supply chain, which, I mean, as a number of you agree, and I've heard from a lot of people, it's really been difficult. But that could be a sustainability possibility. In my own head, I thought that's one, so I'm going to pursue that. Do you see this one here from Deirdre?
Yeah, hey Deirdre, how's it going? We're Deirdre and I are working on some sustainability things. So Deirdre is commenting to we Irish wool market to a closed loop, ultimate transparency, nose to toes of the sheep. We can own this market collectively to democratize wool. So Deirdre is on a mission to reinvigorate the Irish wool market as somebody who makes felt and has been a felt maker and crafter, making and using wool and teaching other people to do that. I think that Deirdre has incredible ambitions around wool, and it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. And I think it's really good to see somebody who has experience in the commodity market and trading really wanting to own that wool space in Ireland. So I love that. And Deirdre has great vision about how we might reach out both to Northern Ireland and across the water to our Scottish cousins and allies as well. So Arlene, will you let me know, thanks Deirdre for that comment. Arlene, will you let me know what your product that you're selling is? My apologies, I am familiar with everybody. So you're saying that you're going to explain your sustainability practices to clients, which is I think that's great. I think that's a good start. So if at any stage through the conversation you thought, oh, actually I do this, or oh, actually that would be something that I could talk to people about, do that. You are looking at all the time is as an Irish designer maker, you're looking all the time for that unique product offering. And one of the things that I think that you guys can make more of is drawing out that product offering. Making sure that it's visible, making it irresistible. And really, the conscious consumer will be really looking for products that I think that Irish designers and makers can really supply to. So just reading in the chat as well. She's a painter. So Arlene's a painter, photographer, and creates children's books digitally. Oh, amazing. So yeah, go for it, Arlene. And I'd be really curious to see how you get on. So you can find me on social media and let me know. And I'm really happy if you guys are doing really good, sustainable and tracking into conscious consumer market segments. I'd be really interested to hear from you and give you a boost on it. Morabelle, as a consumer of Irish-made design products, I would like the message to be clear about how sustainable the product packaging is. Lots of crafters are telling me are offering sustainable packaging, but not telling me. And I think that's a really good insight, Maura. Thank you for that. And that's the key component. I wonder, are quite a lot of you already in practice around sustainability, but you've almost forgotten you're doing that. So communicating that at the till, at the point of sale, communicating that via your social channels will encourage people to relate to you in that way as well. And it all adds to the brand and the brand story. Okay, Sandra King, my business is very much sustainable, but from this talk I realize I need to communicate what I do and how I do it. Brilliant. I'll be making an effort to be more aware of what I'm posting and how I'm posting to on social media. I also support what Deirdre's trying to achieve with Will. Great. And Arlene is saying she also has wearable art. Brilliant. And I think that if after this webinar that you guys get to the point of talking about it more, being more aware about it, thinking about it across your practices, I think that would be really good.
Okay, I like the comments about making, as Adele says, making it visible, the sustainability bit visible. So I think if you have concluding comments, Roisin, we'll take those, and we'll leave it that if you've got a group that you want to take with you, then I'll pursue that for you. So have you any parting words of wisdom?
My parting words of wisdom are get on it. We're going to run out of track very fast. I think that Irish designers and makers have unique selling points that you're not selling to. I think that you can carve this market very distinctly for yourself. So I'd love to see you own it more. And good luck. And, you know, with all the troubles and strife that we've had, you know, think about those little pieces. Think about using EcoCart as on your e-commerce sites. And if you haven't got e-commerce sites, get on it.
Okay.
Thanks a lot,
Roisin,
everybody.
So much. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll talk soon. Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.